They left me at a gas station when I was 14, but 20 years later, they found me on TV. My mic pack is still taped to my ribs, my hair is stiff with spray, and I'm halfway through peeling the false lashes off when the producer cracks open the dressing room door and says, "Hey, there are people here asking for you," like she's trying to decide whether to whisper or shout. I blink at her in the mirror, and my stomach drops so hard it feels like I missed a step on stairs. She doesn't look away. She shifts her clipboard to her other hand. "They're in the lobby," she adds, and then, like she can't stop herself, "They said they're your parents." The room goes thin and bright. The air conditioner suddenly sounds like a plane engine. I can see myself in the mirror. Foundation, glossy lip, the little crease between my brows that makeup can't hide. And it's like I'm looking at a stranger who has no idea what's about to hit her. My fingers freeze mid-lash. "No," I hear myself say, but it comes out more like a breath than a word. I follow her out into the corridor because my legs are moving before my brain is ready, and the studio hallway smells like coffee and hot lights and someone's cologne, and every step feels too loud. When we turn the corner, there's a glass wall that looks down into the lobby, and I see them immediately. Two people standing beside the security desk, side by side like they practiced it. My mother's hair is the same shade of blonde, just thinner now, styled to look nice. My father is heavier, his shoulders slumped, but he's still holding himself like a man who expects to be accommodated. My mother is talking with her hands, face animated, the same performance smile she used to pull out at church. My father keeps glancing around as if he's impatient with the wait. And then my mother looks up, and our eyes meet through the glass. Her mouth opens slightly. She presses her palm to the glass like she's in a movie. I feel my throat clamp shut so tightly it hurts. The producer says something, probably, "Do you want security?" But I can't hear it over the sound of my own pulse. My mother starts waving big, eager waves like she's greeting a celebrity. Like she didn't leave that same kid as servo and drive away. It happened on a Tuesday in the middle of July when I was 14 and still believed that adults had limits. I was in that limbo age where you're too old to be carried but too young to go anywhere without permission, and my parents treated that as an inconvenience. My father had been laid off again, which meant the house was full of that sour, vibrating tension that made you walk softly without meaning to. My mother was in one of her fresh start moods, where she'd rearrange the pantry and talk about moving somewhere cheaper and tell me I should be grateful I didn't have to worry about bills. She also had this habit of calling me dramatic whenever I reacted to anything, and my father would just stare at the TV like the sound might drown out conflict. That week, my mother decided we were going to visit her sister up the coast. She framed it like a fun road trip. "We need a break," she said. "We need to get out." My aunt lived about 4 hours away. We didn't have much money, but my mother had borrowed some from my grandmother, and packed sandwiches in a cooler like that made everything fine. I remember sitting in the back seat with my knees pulled up, watching the landscape blur, trying to keep myself small. I'd learned that if I didn't ask for too much, bathroom breaks, snacks, music changes, I was less likely to be yelled at. About 2 hours in, my parents started fighting. Not screaming immediately, but the kind of low-voiced, sharp back and forth that makes your body tense because it feels like it could explode at any second. My father kept saying, "We shouldn't have come," and my mother kept saying, "Don't start." And then she did start. She brought up bills. She brought up my father's unemployment. She brought up how nobody appreciates her. My father slapped the steering wheel once and told her to shut up. I stared out the window, so hard my eyes watered, pretending I wasn't there. We pulled into a gas station just off the highway as the sun was going down. It was one of those places that's half convenience store, half fluorescent purgatory. The lights were harsh, the forecourt smelled like petrol and hot asphalt, and the air had that thick, damp summer feel. My father parked too close to the bins. My mother unbuckled and turned around in her seat to look at me. "Go to the bathroom," she said. I remember hesitating because my gut already felt wrong. "Can't we just go?" My father snapped, and his voice had that edge that made my skin prickle. "Now." So I went. I pushed the heavy bathroom door open, and it stuck slightly, and inside it smelled like cheap soap and stale air. The fluorescent light flickered. I peed fast, washed my hands, stared at my own face in the mirror. Acne, braces, that cautious look, and tried to steady myself. I told myself they were just angry. I told myself they'd be there when I came out. I told myself I was being stupid for feeling scared. When I walked back out, my parent car was gone. At first, my brain refused to accept it. I stood on the edge of the forecourt with my hands damp from washing, blinking into the glare, scanning the pumps like maybe they'd parked on the other side. I walked toward the road and looked both directions, expecting to see our car pulling back in like it was some twisted joke. The wind was warm. Trucks roared past on the highway, the sound shaking my ribs. My throat went dry. I went back inside the store. The cashier was a man in his 20s with tired eyes. I hovered near the counter, trying to look normal, trying to act like I wasn't a kid whose parents had just vanished. I said, and my voice cracked. My parents, they were here. They have the car. I went to the bathroom, and the cashier frowned. You sure they're not outside? I looked. I whispered. He glanced toward the window, then back at me. What's their number? I didn't have a phone. This was before everyone had one, and my parents liked that. You don't need a phone, my father would say. Kids don't need privacy. So I gave the cashier our home landline. He called. No answer. He called again. Nothing. I started crying without meaning to. It was the worst kind of crying, silent and humiliating, because I was trying so hard to hold it in and my body didn't care. The cashier's face changed, less annoyed, more alarmed. He said, hey, and motioned for me to sit on the little plastic chair near the lottery tickets. He called someone else, maybe his manager, maybe the police, I don't know. Time got weird. It's like my brain filed that whole hour under unreal. A police officer arrived, then another. They asked me questions. My name, my parents' names, our address, what happened. I kept saying, they'll come back. Maybe they forgot. Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. The officer looked at me with this careful gentleness that made me feel even more ashamed. They found my parents' car on a traffic camera heading north. No sign of it turning back. They drove me to the station. They let me call home again. Still no answer. They called my aunt, whose number I knew because my mother used to threaten to send me to her when I was being too much. My aunt answered and immediately sounded irritated. What do you mean you're with the police? She said like I planned it. When the officer explained, there was a long pause. Then my aunt said, your mother said you were being difficult all day. Like that was relevant. Like that explained abandonment. Eventually, my mother called the police station. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't sound frantic. She sounded angry. She ran off, she said. She's always dramatic. She probably wanted attention. I remember the officer's face, the way his jaw tightened. Ma'am, he said, very controlled, your daughter was found alone at a service station off the highway. She says you drove away while she was in the bathroom. My mother did this little laugh. That's ridiculous, she said. We never left her. The officer asked her where she was right now. My mother said she and my father were at my aunt's house. He asked why they didn't come back immediately. My mother said, we couldn't turn around. She knows better than to wander off. The officer looked at me across the desk. My entire body felt like it was shrinking. Because here was the thing. Even if my parents were somehow telling themselves a version where they didn't abandon me, they were not coming back. They hadn't called. They hadn't checked. They'd gone on with their trip. They were comfortable enough in their story, she ran off, to leave a 14-year-old alone on a highway and sleep in a guest room. That night, I didn't go home. A social worker came. They used words like temporary placement and safety. I ended up in a foster home 2 suburbs away, in a small room with flowered curtains and a bedspread that smelled like clean laundry. The woman who took me in, Sandra, gave me toast and sat at the end of the couch like she didn't want to overwhelm me. She asked if I wanted to call anyone. I said no, because I didn't know who anyone was supposed to be. My parents didn't fight for me. That was the part that took me years to admit, because it's easier to say things were complicated than to say that it didn't want me enough to drive back. The social worker tried contacting them. They missed appointments. They said they were busy. My mother told the caseworker I was manipulative. My father said I made home miserable. They framed it like I was a burden they'd been forced to carry until I acted out. After a few months, the story around me solidified. I was the teenager who ran away. The difficult one. The problem. My mother leaned into it because it made her look like the patient martyr. My father went along because it meant he didn't have to feel guilty. I stopped trying to argue. You can't debate your own childhood when the adults have already picked a narrative that protects them. Foster care was its own messy universe. Some homes were fine. Some were not. I got lucky more than once, and unlucky in ways I still don't like to detail. Sandra wasn't perfect, but she was steady. She kept showing up. She made me school lunches. She drove me to therapy, even when I sat in the car refusing to get out. When I had nightmares, she didn't call me dramatic. She just put a glass of water on my nightstand and left the hallway light on. The first time she said, "What happened to you wasn't your fault," I got so angry I slammed my bedroom door because hearing it out loud made everything real. I finished high school. I worked part-time at a supermarket. I saved every cent like money was oxygen. I applied for scholarships and somehow got one. At 18, I aged out of the system with a garbage bag full of clothes and a folder of documents that made my life feel like paperwork. I didn't have parents cheering in the stands at graduation. Sandra was there, clapping too loud, crying openly. I didn't know how to accept love without bracing for the catch, but she kept offering it anyway. I moved to the city for university. I studied communications because I was obsessed with truth by then. Truth, proof, the difference between what happened and what people claim happened. I worked nights at a call center. I lived with roommates in places with moldy bathrooms. I learned how to fill out forms, how to advocate, how to keep my face neutral when people asked, "So where are your parents?" I learned to say, "We're not close," in a tone that made them stop asking. I didn't tell anyone about the gas station for a long time. It felt too specific, too pathetic, too unbelievable. Sometimes I'd be at a servo filling up my car, and my hands would start shaking. Sometimes the smell of petrol would make my throat tighten. Sandra once asked me why I always looked tense at service stations, and I said, no reason, because I couldn't stand the idea of someone seeing that raw part of me. Somewhere along the line, I started working in TV, not because I wanted fame, because I wanted the kind of job where facts mattered. I started as a runner, then an assistant, then production. I learned how stories get shaped, how people edit themselves, how a single clip can make someone look like a saint or a villain. The more I learned, the more I understood my mother's skill wasn't being a good parent. It was being a convincing one. Eventually, I ended up on camera. Not overnight, not in a fairy tale way. I filled in on a segment once when someone was sick. I was terrified. My voice shook, but I did it. Then I did it again. I got better. I worked harder than everyone because I never believed I was safe. I built a career out of being prepared. I kept my past quiet, mostly. I had friends. I dated. I made a life. But there was always that locked box in my chest labeled 14, and I didn't open it unless I was alone. Then, this year, our network did a series on youth homelessness. How kids slip through cracks. How runaway is sometimes just a polite word for abandoned. The producer asked if anyone on staff had personal experience, because lived experience makes stories more honest. I sat in the meeting with my hands clasped so tightly my nails dug into my skin. I didn't speak. I told myself I didn't want pity. I told myself it wasn't relevant. I told myself I'd worked too hard to be taken seriously. After the meeting, my colleague, Tara, caught me in the hallway. She noticed because she's observant. "You went quiet," she said. "You okay?" And something in me was tired of carrying it alone. I told her, not the whole thing, but enough. Gas station. 14. Police. Foster care. Parents didn't come back. Tara stared at me like she couldn't breathe. Then she said, very softly, "That's exactly what we're trying to explain." The network asked if I'd be willing to do an on-air interview as part of the series. Me, not as a reporter, but as a person. I said no 3 times. Then I thought about all the kids who get dismissed as dramatic, all the kids who get labeled difficult because it's easier than admitting adults failed them. I thought about 14-year-old me sitting under fluorescent lights at a service station, trying to convince herself her parents would come back if she waited long enough. I thought about the way my mother still told everyone I ran away, even when the story made no sense. So I agreed. I told myself it would be controlled. I told myself it would be one segment, and then I'd go back to normal. I didn't think about my parents watching. I genuinely didn't. In my head, they were closed chapter. They'd moved on. They'd built their own version. They wouldn't want to reopen it, because that would mean facing what they did. But then the segment aired. It was on a Saturday morning. I sat in the studio under hot lights and talked about the gas station in a voice that sounded calm, even though my insides were shaking. I described the smell, the waiting, the moment I realized the car wasn't coming back. I didn't call my parents monsters. I didn't scream. I just said what happened. The host asked, gently, "Did they ever come looking for you?" And I said, "No." And the word landed like a brick in my mouth. And now, an hour after it aired live, my producer is telling me my parents are in the lobby. The elevator ride down feels like falling. I keep thinking I might throw up. My palms are sweaty. My mouth tastes like metal. The producer stays beside me, talking softly about options, security, a private room, leaving out the back, but I can't absorb it. I'm trapped in this surreal overlap of timelines. 14-year-old me waiting under fluorescent lights, and 34-year-old me wearing studio makeup about to face the people who taught her abandonment can be rewritten as drama. We get to the lobby, and security waves us through a side door into a small conference room off the main entrance. It smells like carpet cleaner and stale coffee. There's a box of tissues on the table, which feels like a joke. 2 security guards stand outside. The producer stays with me. "You don't have to do this," she says quietly. "I do." I whisper, and I'm not even sure who I'm trying to convince. A minute later, the door opens, and my parents come in like they own the room. My mother goes first, already crying, already performing. She reaches for me immediately, arms wide. "Oh my God," she sobs. "My baby." I step back so fast I bump the table. My father's eyes flick over me. Hair, clothes, posture, taking inventory. He looks older, yes, but the entitlement is familiar. The expectation that I will make this easy for him. My mother's face pinches. "Why are you?" she starts, then she changes tactics instantly, turning to the producer. "Hi," she says, voice trembling. "Thank you for letting us come. We've been searching for her for years." I stare at her, and the anger is so sharp it clears the fog in my head. "No, you haven't," I say, and my voice is steady in a way that surprises me. My mother blinks, offended that I didn't follow the script. "Sweetheart," she whispers, like I'm about to embarrass her. "You left me," I say, "at a gas station." My father's jaw tightens. "We did not leave you," he says fast. Too fast. "You ran off." I laugh once, small and ugly. "I ran off into a bathroom," I say, "at 14, with no phone." "And you drove away." My mother puts a hand to her chest. "We thought you were in the car," she says, and I can hear how carefully she's shaping it. There was confusion. "You were always, you were always storming off." I look at her and feel something cold settle in my stomach. 20 years, and she still wants the story where I'm the problem. "You called the police station and told them I ran away," I say. "Do you remember that?" My mother's eyes flick to my father. He looks at the carpet. "We were scared," he mutters. "You were at Aunt Leanne's house," I say. "You didn't come back." My mother starts crying harder, as if volume can rewrite reality. "You have no idea what we went through," she says. "We were torn apart. People judged us. We were told." I cut her off. "You went through being judged?" I repeat. "I went through foster care." My father finally looks up, and for a second his eyes are wet. "We didn't know how to handle you," he says, like that's an explanation. "You were difficult." There it is. The same old label, polished and reused. My hands clench on the edge of the table. "I was 14, I say. I was difficult because you made home unsafe." My mother's crying stops abruptly. She wipes her face and leans forward, voice sharpening. "We came because we saw you on television," she says. "We saw what you said, and we're not going to be portrayed like monsters." The producer shifts beside me, uncomfortable. My mother turns to her again. "We want to tell our side," she says. "We want to correct the record." The audacity of it makes my lungs feel tight. They didn't come to apologize. They came to manage optics. They came to get ahead of the narrative. They came because, after 2 decades of silence, my face on TV threatened their version of themselves. You want to correct the record? I asked. The record is that you didn't come back. My father rubs his forehead. We made mistakes, he says, like he's trying to sound reasonable. But you made it sound like we abandoned you on purpose. I stare at him. You did abandon me on purpose, I say quietly. Even if you told yourself it wasn't. Even if you convinced yourself I deserved it. You left, and then you didn't fix it. My mother's eyes narrow. We tried, she snaps, and the mask slips. You were poisoned against us. By who? I ask. The police officer who listened to you blame me? The social worker you didn't show up for? The foster parents who fed me when you didn't call? My mother's mouth opens, then closes. She looks genuinely confused that I have facts, like she expected me to be the same scared teenager who could be steamrolled. My father shifts in his chair, and suddenly his voice goes soft. You're successful, he says, like he's tasting the word. We're proud of you. I feel sick. Don't, I say. My mother reaches across the table again, trying to touch my hand. We just want to be part of your life, she whispers. We're getting older. We don't have much. We've had such a hard time. Your dad's health. There it is. The real reason. Not love. Not regret. Need. Access. You didn't want to be part of my life when I was 14, I say. You don't get to want it now because it looks good. My mother's face hardens. So you're going to punish us forever, she says, voice rising. After all we did for you. I actually feel something like laughter rise, but it dies before it reaches my mouth. What did you do for me? I ask, and my voice shakes on did. Tell me. Give me one thing you did after you drove away. My father's eyes flicker. He can't answer. My mother opens her mouth, then says, we loved you. Like love is a feeling that exists without action. I push back my chair and stand because I can't breathe sitting down. My legs tremble. I can feel sweat at the base of my spine under the studio clothes. You didn't come here to apologize, I say, looking at both of them. You came here because you're embarrassed. Because people saw me. Because you're scared of being seen as the people you actually were. My mother stands too, eyes blazing. How dare you, she hisses. We are your parents. The words hit me. Old power, old hierarchy, but they don't stick the way they used to. You were, I say quietly. Then you chose not to be. My father's voice cracks. We didn't think you'd ever. He gestures vaguely, like he means become someone, like he means be visible. And that's when I understand something that takes the last bit of softness out of my chest. They didn't come because they missed me. They came because they didn't expect me to survive them in a way that would reflect back on them. The producer steps in gently, professional. This conversation is private, she says. We won't be putting you on air. My mother's face twists. You have to, she says, turning desperate. People will think. They will think what happened. I cut in. Because it did. I walk to the door. My hands are shaking so hard I can barely grip the handle. I pause, because some part of me still wants, stupidly, painfully, some sentence that fixes everything. An apology. A confession. Anything. But my mother is already talking again, already trying to bargain. We could meet, she says quickly. We could do therapy. We could. You don't get to rebuild on my terms now, I say, and my voice is rough. You had 20 years. You didn't use them. My father makes a small sound like a sob swallowed. I look at him one last time and see something human there. Regret, maybe, or just shame, but it's too late for it to be my responsibility. I open the door. Security is waiting. The producer touches my shoulder as I pass, steadying me. In the hallway, away from them, my body starts to shake in a delayed, full-body way, like my nervous system finally gets permission to react. I press my back against the wall and slide down until I'm sitting on the carpet, breathing too fast. The producer crouches beside me. Do you want to call someone? She asks. And the first person I think of isn't my parents. It's Sandra. I call her with my fingers still trembling. She answers on the second ring, as if she's been holding the phone. I saw you, she says immediately, voice thick. You were brave. I swallow hard. They're here. I whisper. A beat of silence. Then Sandra's voice goes steady in that way it always did when I was a kid and the world felt too big. Where are you? At the studio, I say, and my throat closes. They saw me on TV. They came. Sandra exhales slowly. Listen to me, she says. You don't owe them your life because they made you. My eyes burn. I press my knuckles against my mouth so I don't make a sound that will echo down the hallway. I know. I whisper. I feel 14 again. I know, she says, and her voice softens. But you're not. You're safe. You have choices now. After the call, I sit there for a long time, breathing, letting my body catch up to time. Eventually, I stand, wipe my face, and go back to my dressing room. I take off the mic pack. I peel off the lashes. I watch my own face emerge in the mirror. Less polished, more tired, more real. My phone buzzes with unknown numbers. Voicemails. Texts. I don't listen to any of them. I know what they'll be. My mother crying, my father pleading, both of them trying to find a door back into a life they left behind at a gas station. I go home early. I take the long way, avoiding highways on instinct, even though I'm grown. When I pull into my driveway, my hands are still a little shaky on the steering wheel. The cat meets me at the door, winding around my legs like nothing in the world has changed. I feed her. I sit on the kitchen floor and let the quiet settle around me. Later that night, my producer messages me. Security escorted them out. Your mother tried to argue. Your father didn't say much. They asked for your contact info. We didn't give anything. I stare at the message until the screen dims. Then I set my phone down and feel this strange, heavy relief. Not happy, not victorious, just resolved. Because the thing people don't understand about being left is that it doesn't end when you're picked up. It doesn't end when you're placed somewhere else. It lives in your body like a reflex. It shows up in the way you check exits, in the way you flinch when someone is late, in the way you keep your important documents in one folder, because you learned early that stability can disappear in the time it takes to use a bathroom. And it shows up, apparently, in a studio lobby 20 years later, when the people who left you finally decide they want you again. Not because they've changed, but because the world can see you now. They found me on TV. They found my face, my voice, my story, polished under lights. They didn't find the kid at the gas station because they never went back for her. They just found the adult she became in spite of them, and they wanted to claim her like she was proof they weren't who they were. But I know who they were. I remember the fluorescent hum, the forecourt glare, the way the highway sounded like it could swallow me whole. I remember waiting until my legs hurt, telling myself, any second now, any second now. And now, when I hear my mother say, "We're your parents," like it's a trump card, I finally have an answer that isn't fear. You don't get to return to a place you abandoned and call it yours.